Welcome back to the Golden State with Mates post-game live as I just try and fix my necklace here, after the Warriors suffered a 124-115 loss to the Atlanta Hawks at State Farm Arena on Saturday. Not sure I really have too much to say about that, so I'll let you guys kind of lead the discussion in the comments. Obviously, just a really, really poor start. 40-23 opening period. Warriors couldn't get any stops. Atlanta shoot like in excess of 70% in the first quarter. Got up 17. And then when you face that kind of margin and you don't have Steph Curry, things become very difficult because Steph, obviously, we've never seen a guy maybe ever, aside from him in NBA history, who can rattle off, a 20-point quarter, a run of a barrage of threes like he can. So maybe Clay back in the day, but I think when you don't have Steph and you go down that margin on the road, it makes things very difficult. And credit to the Warriors, they fought hard over the remainder of the game. They got back within single digits a couple of times, including, in the last couple of minutes there, but they never really, I think the closest they may have got within was like 8 points, I believe. Like they were never really in the game after the first quarter. And so a disappointing result. Just saw there that Draymond called it a bad loss, really bad loss. So yeah, I don't know how much to take from it. They just came out really poor in the first quarter and weren't able to recover from there. Defensively, they were pretty terrible. Atlanta shot 57% from the floor, nearly 42% from 3-point range. Kind of did most of their work probably on the interior in the first half, and then the second half was the George Niang show. He was 6 of 9 from 3-point range, finished with 23 points in 22 minutes off the bench. So the Warriors could never get enough stops to really get back into the game. Some of your comments here. Priscilla says Hawks making everything and playing better defense, while Warriors missing everything and playing sloppy defense. Yeah, some of the open shots that Atlanta were getting was pretty disappointing, really, particularly defensively. Offensively, I mean, you put up 115 points. It's not horrific. That the Warriors did shoot pretty well from three. I think they were in excess of 40% themselves. So, you have Pods go 5 of 8. Quentin Post went 3 of 4. So, yeah, the 3-point shooting was okay. The offense was okay, even though you're obviously without Steph. But again, just not able to get the stops to be able to get back into the game. Knox says, how do we get blown out by the Hawks? I know no Steph, but it shouldn't have been a blowout. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't really a blowout because all the main guys played. And that's probably the biggest takeaway I have from this game is just how much I think Steve might have cranked up the urgency here with Jimmy playing 37 and a half minutes, Draymond playing 35-12, Pods played 36-10, even Moody played 34 and a half minutes. So all the key guys kind of played big minutes. And to me, that might have been the biggest talking point. And we'll get to Kuminga in a second, but he's kind of not one of the main guys at the moment. And that's a big problem that the Warriors are facing. Streetcar says their offense was humming and Draymond seemed to step slower. As great as QP is as a sniper, his defense on smaller guards is terrible, like worst in the league bad. Maybe play a zone with him out there. They did do that, I think, a little bit in the first half. I agree with that. Like he's just a real liability in pick and roll scenarios and in defense where he has to come out of the paint. Like that's just is what it is. And it's only going to get worse from here. Like when you go into the playoffs, teams are really going to be honed in on that and really trying to exploit that. So as good of a shooter as he is, again, 3 or 4 today, I like the kind of fake and drive to the rim left-hand layup that he had, I think, fourth quarter there or late in the third, whatever it was. That was nice. So offensively, he's fine. He's been a major revelation, but of course, defensively, that's still where the question marks are. Played 27 and a half minutes in this game. I still think he's probably worth having out there as opposed to a guy like Looney. Like, Looney played less than 5 minutes in this game. Interested to see that TJD got some run. I actually didn't mind the TJD minutes in the third quarter. 4.5 minutes, 1 of 3, 3 rebounds, had a big block shot. So, yeah, I didn't mind the TJD minutes. Maybe you try and bring him back into the piece. I wrote an article yesterday saying that it'd basically be very difficult at this point of the season after so much time out of the rotation to bring TJD back in the last, 11 games. Well, this was the 12th last game today. So, it'd be difficult to bring TJD back in and have him engaged and get him playing with Jimmy and all that other kind of stuff in any meaningful way. But maybe that's what you have to do because posts defensively there's obviously limitations. And that's the issue. The Warriors don't have at this point a big, two-way center, to post as a liability defensively, and Looney and TJD are liabilities offensively. That's simply what it is. I think at this point in time, it's worth persisting in post because I do like what he does or how he's grown as a rim protector over recent weeks. And I do think that he can become a reasonable defender in time. And so it's probably worth persisting with, but it's also hard to balance when you're also, let's put it this way, like you're in trying to win a championship with a veteran trio of Steph, Jimmy, and Draymond. So it's a tough balance for the Warriors and Steve Kerr to try and find there. Thenix says, why did we decide to play in the fourth? Didn't guard the perimeter and we couldn't get a rebound. Haven't won in Atlanta since 2018-19. Yet 6 years now since we beat the Hawks. Last time the Warriors beat Atlanta, Klay Thompson was obviously on the Warrior roster and playing before his two major injuries, and Kevin Durant was also on the Warrior roster. So plenty has changed between now the last time the Warriors won in Atlanta and now, of course. Andrew the Goat says, that is so embarrassing. The Warriors lost to the Hawks without Curry tonight. That is so bad. It's bad. Oh, I do want to say Atlanta have actually been in some pretty good form. They came in winning six of their last 9, so they've now won 7 of their past 10. They got some good players. Like Trae Young's obviously an all-star player. Okongwu was absolutely magnificent in the first half. Dyson Daniels, probably the best guard / wing defender in the league, and was doing plenty of two-way stuff in this one. So they've got some decent players, right? Yes, you should have probably won this game. Yes, that team is still below 500, and any loss to a team below 500 is disappointing. But I want to give Atlanta some flowers. I think they played pretty well in this game, and the Warriors, again, just didn't show up in the first 12 minutes, and it came back to hurt them. Then says we cut it to 6 in the third, then Kirk called a timeout when we were down 16. Was it 6? Is that what we got? I thought it might have been 8. Might have been 6. Yeah, either way, it kind of felt like we were pushing uphill all game. It was a struggle. Berserk Monk says, how could our defense be this bad with our best defensive lineups out there? People can't blame it on Curry this time. It's a good point. I actually had some optimism that, hey, the Warriors' defense could be even better now, and that's probably the one thing you may be able to point to with Steph is that obviously I wouldn't say he's a defensive liability, but obviously teams can hunt him because of the lack of size there. And I thought, okay, well, maybe the Warriors can actually be better defensively. And we kind of saw that against the Bucks. The Warriors absolutely strangled the Bucks without Steph on Tuesday. And then on Thursday, the Raptors had 90 points, with 15 minutes still left in the game. And then they score 24 points only in the final 15 minutes after Steph goes out. So that was, those two things there made me think, okay, maybe this team can be elite defensively and therefore still win these games without Steph or, however long he may miss. Hopefully he might be back on Tuesday against the Heat. I'm skeptical about that. We'll wait and see. But unfortunately in this one, the defense didn't show up regardless of whether Steph was there or not. Logan says Clippers and T-Wolves right close to us. We can't afford to lose any more games. Yeah, the Clippers play. So the bad news is that the Clippers can actually pass the Warriors because they can tie the Warriors, I think, record-wise tomorrow. And because they hold the season tiebreak, they'd technically be ahead of the Warriors in the standings. The good news of that is they play the Thunder. And so hopefully the Thunder rock up with their best guys and rock up with their best basketball, and hopefully you can win that game. And the Clippers still do have a reasonably tough schedule remaining. Not so much so for the Timberwolves, who are now within half a game or whatever else. So, yeah, I don't know. It's getting tight. And this is the issue. Any loss, there's so many teams around the West right now, in the top 8 are winning and are on winning streaks that any loss can be really painful for you. Tired basketball fans says they have to lean on their defense without Steph, but they showed no interest to play any until it was too late. Agree with that. Logan says, actually, if we get the 7th seed, it might be better than the 6th. Yeah, we spoke about this the other day in regard to the Rockets potentially finishing second and wanting to play the Rockets in the first round, and therefore 7th maybe not being a disaster. I just don't want to have to go to the playing tournament. That can just get really tricky. And again, like you could just play 2 bad games and be straight out and you don't even make the playoffs. So I have no interest in flirting with the playing tournament, I don't think. The next is our bench didn't score in the third. Tired basketball fan says they have zero idea what they want to do offensively when both Steph and Jimmy are off the floor, no identity. I mean, kind of makes sense. You take the 2 best players and the 2 biggest offensive creators off any team, and I think most will struggle. Logan says, felt like that one guy on the Hawks didn't miss a single 3. Yeah, Niang was 6 of 3. From 3 off the bench, as I always says. Henry says existential crisis, but it's teams like Atlanta where there are lengthy defenders and players that can outsize and outspeed you at almost every position our defense can suffer. Interesting. I mean, we beat Atlanta very easily earlier in the season on our home floor. I think it was 120-97 in that game. So I don't know. There's certainly something about the Hawks and playing in Atlanta though. Clearly, like this is 6 straight now that the Warriors have lost at State Farm Arena. Thenix says I said 4-0, but now I think we go 2-2. Henry says it's games like these where you really miss Wiggins' defense at the point of attack. I thought JP2 was good again. He obviously missed Thursday's game against the Raptors. He came back in this game, played nearly 17 minutes off the bench, 5 of 7 from the floor, 11 points, 4 rebounds. Was a +6, which was only behind. JP2 was a +6, and Jimmy was a +11. Everyone else was in the negatives in this game. Logan says Jimmy still hasn't got it going offensively yet. Yeah, I mean, he put up 25, 4, and 8, but you're right. Like, it didn't feel like he completely dominated the game by any means. Empire says, do you think the Warriors have to beat the Denver or the Lakers in the back-to-back to be considered serious contenders? Possibly, yeah. Look, you know what? I'm not really worried about championship contention at the moment. I'm just worried about making the playoffs, and then we can kind of reevaluate. Because if you make the playoffs, then and that would mean you finish off the season strongly, and therefore maybe you are in championship contention. So it's not at this point in the season with such a short time frame left in the regular season. Like I'm just worried about this right now, first and foremost, as that's how the team should be taking it. We shouldn't be worried about are you in the championship conversation. You know, a few weeks back, All-Star break, that's the time you can have those conversations and those discussions. But for right now, it's really take it one game at a time. I think the old cliche. Berserk Monk says Warriors do struggle against teams that can play lengthy, bigger forwards that can match our speed and space us out. Then says that trade travel was wild. Yeah, that was the end of the first quarter. He kind of got bottled up on a double team at half court, and it just took about 6 or 7 steps. So that was wild. No other way to put it. BT Vino says we look shook in that arena. Yeah, it's a weird one. Don't really get it. It's not like Atlanta have been great. Like they've always kind of been this middling 7-10 team really over recent years. It's not as if there's some absolute, force in the NBA and that, multiple teams here wouldn't have won in Atlanta for 6 years. Berserkma says, I don't trust Tony Brothers as a ref. Always weird stuff happens in our games with him. VT Venus says, post with that strange goaltend too. Yeah, that was a funny one. Steve says, I was really excited about this team, but the fact is they are too small. Curry's addicted to small ball. They need a playable center. Post can help you on the offensive end, and that's it. I mean, do we need to have a conversation about it again in the offseason about what the Warriors are doing at the center position moving forward? I think they do need to make a decision on whether Quentin Post is a starting center. Maybe not necessarily for the rest of this season, but like next season, you have to go into the season believing that Quentin Post can be a starting big. If you don't believe that, you need to go and get one because I'm not sure you want to be starting Draymond at the starting spot, over the course of an entire 82 game season. Charlie, I'm sorry, Steve Kerr sucks. Warriors suck. Jimmy Butler sucks. Okay, righto. You give me what you didn't like from Steve in this game. Henry says, even so, considering Wiggins is 6'7", barefoot, as athletic as GP2 is, the wingspan and then the three-point shooting, I'm still seeing that hole on our team composition. Moody has, however, been doing so well, though. Yeah, I think Moses has taken a step defensively. Maybe we could reconfigure in the conversation of a potential sign and trade of Kuminga for Wiggins in the offseason. Steve says, Warriors can only beat Houston or Memphis. They cannot beat another Western Conference playoff team. Let's be obvious. No one on this team can guard in space. Draymond being the exception. It's over. A lot of pessimism. Again, this was kind of like the game on Monday against the Nuggets. Like, I'm not going to get too down based on this performance. My biggest concern here, and I'll just read out B24's comment as I get into this. It says, Kerr is the worst coach in the league for Kuminga. It's clear when you give Kuminga a purpose on offensive ball, 16 points in the first half, and Kerr doesn't play him in the fourth. Berserkman says, well, Kuminga was a -18 in 22 minutes. This Kuminga stuff is, I mean, it's just the biggest talking point at the moment. And there was a lot of good in the first half again today. 16 points as a team high in scoring. And then it gets to the end of the game in the fourth quarter and Steve goes, well, I just wanted to play my best guys. And basically Kuminga wasn't part of that. And so, again, it's hard to argue when he's a minus 18 in his 22 minutes, and it's still a lot of the stuff is way too much. It's very non-Golden State-ish in terms of him getting the ball and the ball sticking and not moving. As good as you can be going to the rim, he had that M1, a couple of other nice takes. I don't know. Like this is a problem. This is a real problem if Steve Kerr's deciding he's not part of our closing five in most situations. He's a 20 to 22 minute per game player. I don't know what you do with that, right? Because it's not necessarily conducive to winning right now. And if that's also the case, then what are you doing in the offseason when he's a restricted free agent? Like that's a big problem, I think. So we're going to wait and see what happens. But this one, again, not playing at all in the fourth quarter in a game where you'd think without Steph, you need someone's scoring punch. And Kuminga provided that for you in the first half. That's wild to me, the fact he didn't play in the fourth. I'm not completely disagreeing with it. I'm just saying it's wild that Jonathan Kuminga did not play in the fourth quarter. That's a concern, right? That is a problem. Logan says matchups definitely matter. If Warriors could get Rockets, Memphis, and play OKC in the conference finals, that's the best matchups. Henry says Kuminga for Wiggins is the move. Logan says Warriors can beat OKC. Jane says love your dedication, bro, even on losses. I appreciate that. I was a bit checked out in this game, to be honest, after the first quarter. I was just like, probably going to lose this game. I don't feel that inspired about the team coming back from 17 down without Steph. So it's one of those games where, I don't know, I was watching it, right? I was tuning in, but it's kind of the mindset, the concentration wasn't particularly there. It was almost like the players probably in that first quarter. Logan says, as for the Nuggets and Lakers, they got our number. Berserk Monk says, we can't take a lot from these games anyway. March games are weird, plus Steph isn't out there fully healthy. Yeah, I mean, the only thing, it's just the result. It's a result-based thing at the moment. Like, you lose a game and you're in trouble, and the Warriors are in trouble. They could fall back to 8th here rather quickly in the West. Now, the fortunate thing is there's still a reasonable gap between them and the Kings, so I don't think they can fall any further than 8th. But you don't want to have to go to the play-in tournament. And unfortunately, you have a couple of more performances like this and you could be. And it's not necessarily, that's going to be the issue is if the Warriors, the last few games of the season have to rely on other results to go their way. You don't want to be relying on others. You want to be able to have your own destiny in your own hands. Henry says, after Jimmy's performance against the Raptors, I'm convinced we will do fine. Let me know if you still want that jersey, bro. the Jimmy jersey. I need to buy one. Maybe when I get paid. Henry says, I was at church and after it finished, I saw the score. Oops, you should have prayed harder. Empire says, Warriors need to stop driving to the rim just to pass up an open layup, and none of the Warriors centers can make layups. Hard to disagree. Logan says, what's your prediction for the rest of the road trip? Ideally, we go 4-2. Yeah, well, you've lost one now, and it's like you got to make up for that, and you can't afford another one. So the Warriors have got the Heat coming up here. What else is going? It's the Heat, the Pelicans, the Spurs, isn't it? And then I was going to say the Nuggets, but that might not be right. Warriors schedule. I know they do play the Nuggets in Denver. They play, as we wait for it to load, they play the Heat, the Pelicans, the Spurs, the Grizzlies, and the Lakers. Grizzlies and Lakers are going to be difficult. I don't know. Geez, you got to really beat the Heat, the Pelicans, and the Spurs. You got to win the next 3 games. You have to. Otherwise, it's a problem. Berserk Monk says Warriors will turn up the intensity on this next game against Miami, especially if Steph is ready to go. You'd imagine Jimmy will be absolutely chomping at the bit, ready to go and ready to try and exact some revenge for how his time in Miami ended and their unwillingness to give him a massive contract extension, obviously. Tired basketball fan says wild that the Hawks are sub 500, but a 7th with a bigger lead on 8th than the Warriors have on 8th. Yeah, I mean, this has been the case for it feels like forever since the East was just as good as the West. Like, it feels like ages. It feels like years and years and years have gone past now where the West is just significantly better than the East, at least in terms of depth. Like, Boston are obviously a very good team. Cleveland are a very good team at the top. But in terms of depth, feels like there's 10, 11 good teams in the West, and there's like 5 or 6 in the East, maybe. Logan says Jimmy still needs to go up a couple of levels. I'm waiting for like the 30-plus point game where, he's really getting it going from a scoring standpoint. It hasn't happened yet. His highest is 26. This is his second game with 25. So, and most of it's still getting to the free throw line. Like he was 10 of 14, 7 of 15. Took 7 threes in this game, only made one of them. Yeah, I don't know. The offense to me wasn't the issue necessarily. It was more so the defense, particularly in the first half. Offense, Jimmy has 25. Moody, I thought was decent, 24 and 5, like some of his drives to the rim and dishes, showing a little bit more of a playmaking element there. Pods went for 19, 8 and 4. Again, shot 5-8 from 3. Post was 3 or 4 from 3. Kuminga had 16 in the first half and then just didn't get used again. And that's probably my biggest takeaway from this game. Like, what's going on with Jonathan Kuminga? Because if he's, again, just a 20 to 22-minute player, then that opens up some real question marks on what this team is going to look like, not only for the rest of the season, but moving forward. Henry says, Kate is real. I'm scared. Moses Moody, his old high school teammate, can attest to that. Kate Cunningham. How about that game winner the other day against the Heat? He's been huge this season. Genuine, multi-time All-Star incoming for him. If you had to set All-Star over underline, what's that at? 5.5, 7.5, maybe, if not more. I don't know. Obviously, injuries can play a factor, but he's been amazing this season. And the Pistons. Pistons are pretty good and have a bright future. Logan says, I'm waiting for him to get that mid-range going. Agree with that. It seems like most of his stuff is really coming at the basket at this point. Henry says he's already a dad. That was a cute surprise. Bro's a girl dad, so that makes him even scarier. Okay. Charlie's still giving it to still having a crack at Steve. Whatever. Berserk Monk says, I don't think Kerr knows how to utilize Kuminga's talent. He wants to use him similarly to how he uses Moody. Also, I thought it was weird Kuminga didn't attack Trae Young, doesn't trust his handle. Yeah, the handle needs to improve, no doubt about that. I think this was my concern with the Butler thing, is that it puts Kuminga back into kind of being a role player, and he's not really a role player, but then he's like a middling player where he's better than a role player. And as a result, he's not really equipped to being a higher level role player, but he's also not the star player that you want on a veteran team that's got championship aspirations. That's the trouble. Danik says, won't be surprised if the Heat break their losing streak against us. Well, they'll also be pretty eager to get a win over Jimmy, so no doubt about that. Logan says, way too much doom and gloom in here. Yeah, it's one loss. It's a disappointing one, particularly after the one at the start of the week on Monday, but we had a couple of wins in between, and, destiny is still in our hands for the moment. Empire says, I think JK should have gone to the G League before coming back into the rotation after the injury. I don't think he would have done that. Logan says, it's not the end of the world if we lose, and we aren't the best team if we win. It's a good perspective. Good perspective. You're never as good as you think you are. You're never as bad as you think you are. Thai basketball fan says, the only thing I enjoyed in this game was the Hawks announcers questioning QP's shot selection and trying to get out of it when he started making them. I was listening to the Warriors broadcast. I didn't catch that. B24 says the defense was absolutely horrible from every single person on the court, including Draymond and Jimmy. TJD gave us a spark in typical Kerr fashion. He doesn't play him again. I'm interested because I actually agree. I actually thought his minutes were pretty good. So I don't know if that means something moving forward. We'll wait and see. Again, I just don't get, like, Looney played 4:44 in the first half, and then TJD plays 4:34 in the second half. Like, what are we doing? You got to figure it out. Gee played 4.5 minutes. I think he had 2 different stints, didn't he? Did he play like 2 minutes in each half? I don't know. I thought that was bizarre. He was a minus 13 in 4.5 minutes. I don't know. There was a shortened rotation to a point where a lot of the main guys played heavy minutes, but you still had these guys at the end of the rotation playing like a few minutes here and there, which I just don't get. Either give them some considerable run or just don't play them at all. Henry says, man, I miss TJD minutes. Bro is old school entertainment with new school passing. Barry says, Dyson is a 6'7" wing at SG. I love Dyson. Great Barrier Thief. It's probably, I don't know, you might still say Josh Giddey's the best Australian player, but Dyson's certainly up there, and looking forward to seeing what he can do in the NBA, obviously, and of course with the Boomers for the next decade plus. I think we saw from TJD what we already know. Good defense, missed some layups, missed some free throws. Yeah. Berserk Monk says 38 minutes for Butler. Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. There's a couple of days off here before the game against the Heat. And you kind of, this is what's going to happen. Like, the urgency's got to rise. You got to win these games. I think everyone knows, like, the minutes will likely increase for the key guys. That's pretty simple. Henry says, I saw Dyson at a club in Sydney last year. Peak moment. Was he on the beers? What was he drinking? Henry says, bro is a real giant, or I'm just short. Who's counting? Well, 6'7" is very, very tall. I mean, I went out to a club once down here in my hometown, and Will Magnay. No one will know who Will Magnay is unless you're Australian. But he did play one game. He played one NBA game for the New Orleans Pelicans. Anyway, he was out in the club, and I just looked up and I was like, oh my goodness. And he's a center, and he's like 220 centimeters. Like that must be 7 foot. I don't even know what's 220 centimeters in feet. 220 centimeters in feet. Yeah, 7'2", right? He's 7'2", and I was just like, holy crap. And he was like, everyone was basically at his waist. It was wild. Logan says, I could see Steph returning it to Heat. I was laughing. Henry said champagne. Of course he was. Fancy stuff. Probably a few $100s a bottle. Zertman says, Dyson Daniels over Giddey. Daniels is like a plug-and-play player on every team. Yeah, I think if you wanted, like, for the Warriors, I think you'd prefer Daniels. I think he's that high-level role player. Again, as Giddey, I think would prefer to have a bit more of a title as not a star player, but a guy that has the ball in his hands a lot, and that can, I think, be a problem. That's why I was a bit concerned with Chicago trading for him, but probably better him being there than stuck in OKC still. B24, there is a reason 80% of the roster was a minus. Care rotations are horrible. Nobody can really gain traction. Hard to argue when guys are playing, you got 3 guys playing 4.5 minutes, basically. It's bizarre. Henry says, it's weird. I felt the change in height between 6'6" and 6'7" between a few street hoopers I met last year too. I think it's just the way they play as a 6'6" guard versus 6'7" forward. I can't say I've ever played basketball against a guy. I mean, if you bit of social league basketball, there's some tall guys, but I don't think there'd be anyone over 6'5", I don't reckon. And even then, like, even when you're 6'5", I'm like 6'1", and it's weird. I don't know, like, when I go and play social league basketball, like, everyone's the same height to me. Like, we played a team on Tuesday night that was, I think everyone was really tall on their team. Everyone was like taller than our tallest guy. Like, I'm 6'1", I play center on our team. Everyone on our team's the same height. We've got a couple of guys who are like 6'3", and they were both out on Tuesday. And I was 6'1" playing center. Like, I think it's just Australians, to be honest. I'm probably above average height at 6'1". I don't know. Logan says, I like Josh Giddey's game a lot. Henry says, Daniels over Giddey too. Daniels hangs his hat on defense. Logan says, tallest person I ever saw in real life was 7'7". I just couldn't imagine that. Could not imagine being that tall. Couldn't imagine, like, seeing. So I've obviously gone to NBA games and stuff, but it's different when you're in a crowd and you're looking down on players. Then you can't really. And when you're in when you see a group of tall people, like a basketball team or whatever, like, then it's not as, it doesn't stand out as much. Obviously, if you just see someone by themselves who are in a group of 20 people and they're clearly like 7 foot tall. Logan says, Paul Sturgis was the guy I saw in real life. He's actually listed 7'8". Wild stuff. Anyway, we're getting on to height. We've been going for nearly half an hour. I'm going to finish it up there. I'm going to go watch some footy this afternoon. It was a decent weekend until today, with the Warriors winning on Friday my time, and then Collingwood winning Friday night. So Friday was good, but this is a little bit more disappointing, obviously. Finish up there. Thanks to everyone that has tuned in and commented. Thanks to those of you that have watched on the replay or via your podcast feed. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel already, that would be greatly appreciated. Follow me at POC252. That's POK252 on X/Twitter. Last thing before I go, actually, because I've just not mentioned this at all, the Warriors are signing Kevin Knox to a rest of season contract as expected there. Don't think he's going to make too much of an impact necessarily, but we may wait and see what happens with injuries and stuff like that. That was reported earlier today, and I think will be confirmed tomorrow. Rest of season contract, no second year on the deal or team option or anything like that. At this point for Kevin Knox, which I'm a little bit surprised by. Maybe you could have tried to get a team option there on a second year. But anyway, it is what it is. Not surprising. We've talked about it previously. So again, I don't think he'll make too much impact. But a guy that deserves, I think, this as a reward for how good he's been in the G League this season. I'll finish it up there. And thanks again, guys, and enjoy the rest of your weekend.